You know, they say money can't buy happiness, but it sure can buy you the satisfaction of proving everyone wrong. My name is Marcus, and I'm about to tell you the story of how a $50 loan from my older brother turned into the most expensive lesson he ever learned about underestimating family. Growing up in Detroit, my brother Jake and I were as different as two people could be. He was the golden boy, the one who always had his act together, while I was the dreamer, the one who adults would shake their heads at and say, "That boy's got his head in the clouds." Jake was 3 years older, and he never let me forget it. Every conversation felt like a reminder of how much more successful, more organized, more responsible he was than me. I remember the exact moment this story really begins. It was a Tuesday morning in March, and I was sitting in my cramped studio apartment, staring at my laptop screen with the kind of desperation that only comes from knowing you're about to miss an opportunity that might never come again. The rent was due in 3 days. I had $17 in my checking account, and my credit cards were maxed out from trying to keep my small consulting business afloat during the worst recession I'd ever experienced. But here's the thing about rock bottom. Sometimes it's the most solid foundation you'll ever find to build something incredible. I'd been working on this idea for months, a software solution that could revolutionize how small businesses managed their inventory and customer relationships. I knew it was brilliant, I knew it could change everything, but I needed just enough money to cover my rent so I could focus entirely on the final development phase, instead of scrambling for survival. That's when I swallowed my pride and called Jake. Now let me paint you a picture of my brother. Jake had landed a management position at a Fortune 500 company right out of college, drove a BMW, lived in a pristine suburban home with his wife Sarah, and had never missed a payment on anything in his entire life. He was the kind of person who organized his sock drawer by color and had a 5-year financial plan that he actually followed. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up, and I could hear the irritation in his voice before he even said hello. "What do you want, Marcus?" No greeting, no "how are you doing?" Just straight to the point. That was Jake. "Hey, Jake. I hope you're having a good morning. Listen, I hate to ask, but I'm in a bit of a tight spot, and I was wondering if you could help me out with a small loan. Just $50 to help me cover part of my rent this month. I know it's not much, but it would really help me out, and I promise I'll pay you back as soon as I can." The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long I thought he'd hung up. Then came the laughter. Not a chuckle, not a polite laugh, but full-blown, belly-shaking laughter that went on for what felt like an eternity. When he finally caught his breath, his words cut through me like a knife. $50. Marcus, you're 32 years old, and you're calling me to borrow $50. Do you realize how pathetic that sounds? I spend more than that on lunch some days. You know what your problem is. You've never learned to be responsible. You've never learned what it means to plan ahead, to save money, to build something real. You're still the same dreamer you were in high school, thinking some magical opportunity is going to fall into your lap and solve all your problems. He paused, and I could hear him typing on his keyboard, probably multitasking like he always did when he talked to me, as if our conversation wasn't worth his full attention. "I'll tell you what, little brother. I'll lend you the $50, but only because I feel sorry for you, and when you inevitably can't pay me back, I don't want to hear any excuses. Maybe this will finally teach you that dreams don't pay bills." The humiliation burned in my chest, but I needed that money. "Thank you, Jake. I really appreciate it, and I promise you'll get it back." "Sure I will," he said, and I could practically hear him rolling his eyes. "I'll transfer it to your account, but Marcus, this is the last time. I'm not your personal ATM, and I'm tired of watching you fail at everything you touch. Maybe it's time you got a real job, something stable, something that actually pays the bills instead of these ridiculous business ventures that never go anywhere." The line went dead, and I sat there staring at my phone, feeling smaller than I had in years. But you know what? Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who give us the greatest motivation to prove them wrong. Jake's words didn't break me. They ignited something inside me that had been dormant for too long. That $50 covered exactly what I needed it to cover, and for the next 3 months, I threw myself into my work with an intensity I'd never experienced before. I worked 18-hour days, lived on ramen noodles and coffee, and poured every ounce of energy I had into perfecting my software. I tested it, refined it, rebuilt it from scratch twice, and tested it again. The breakthrough came on a Thursday night at 2 in the morning. I'd been wrestling with a particularly complex algorithm for weeks, and suddenly everything clicked. The solution was elegant, powerful, and unlike anything else on the market. I spent the next 72 hours straight coding, living on energy drinks and determination until I had a fully functional prototype that exceeded even my own expectations. But having a great product is only half the battle. The real challenge was getting it in front of the right people. I started reaching out to small business owners in my network, offering free trials and demonstrations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Business owners who had been struggling with clunky, expensive software solutions suddenly had access to something that was not only better, but cost a fraction of what they'd been paying. Word spread quickly in the small business community. One satisfied customer recommended me to another, and before I knew it, I was getting calls from companies I'd never heard of, desperate to implement my solution. Within 6 weeks, I had my first paying customers. Within 3 months, I had more clients than I could handle working alone. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to grow slowly and organically, I decided to take a massive leap. I reached out to a venture capital firm in Chicago that specialized in business software solutions. I spent 2 weeks preparing the most comprehensive presentation of my life, complete with user testimonials, financial projections, and a detailed scaling plan. The presentation was scheduled for a Friday morning, and I remember walking into that glass-walled conference room, feeling like I was about to either win the lottery or get laughed out of the building. The 3 partners sat across from me, their faces completely neutral, as I walked them through my software, my business model, and my vision for the future. For 45 minutes, I poured my heart and soul into that presentation. I showed them the problem my software solved, the market demand I'd already proven, and the potential for exponential growth. When I finished, the room was silent for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 seconds. Then the senior partner, a woman named Catherine Morrison, who'd built 2 successful tech companies from the ground up, leaned forward and said, "Marcus, in 20 years of venture capital, I've seen thousands of presentations. Most of them are polished, professional, and completely forgettable. Yours is different. You've built something that actually matters, something that solves a real problem, and you've proven that real customers will pay real money for it. We want to invest." The offer was beyond anything I'd dared to hope for, $2.5 million for a 30% stake in my company. Enough money to hire a development team, scale the business properly, and turn my little software solution into a major player in the industry. I signed the papers that same afternoon, and within a week, my life had completely transformed. I moved out of my studio apartment and into a proper office space. I hired my first employees. I started working with marketing professionals who understood how to reach the small business market on a national scale. But the real transformation wasn't just financial, it was personal. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The confidence that came from that feeling was intoxicating. I started carrying myself differently, speaking with more authority, making decisions with the kind of certainty that only comes from knowing you're on the right path. The growth over the next year was exponential. We launched a comprehensive marketing campaign that introduced our software to small businesses across the country. We developed additional features based on customer feedback. We expanded our team to include some of the most talented developers and business strategists I'd ever worked with. The financial results were staggering. In our first year after the investment, we generated over $8 million in revenue. Our customer base grew from a few dozen local businesses to over 15,000 companies nationwide. The software that had started as a desperate attempt to save my failing consulting business had become one of the fastest-growing business solutions in the industry. But success brings its own challenges. The bigger we got, the more complex everything became. We needed better systems, more sophisticated operations, and eventually we outgrew our original office space. That's when my real estate agent showed me a property that would change the trajectory of this entire story. It was a 6-story building in the heart of Detroit's revitalized downtown district. The ground floor had been a restaurant that had closed during the pandemic, and the upper floors were a mix of office space and luxury apartments. The building had incredible bones, beautiful architectural details, and was located in an area that was rapidly becoming the city's new tech hub. The price was $12 million, and my real estate agent mentioned that the current owner was looking for a quick sale. He was an investor who'd bought the building at the peak of the market and was now facing financial difficulties. He needed to sell fast, and he was willing to consider offers significantly below asking price. I toured the building on a Wednesday morning, and I knew immediately that this was where I wanted to establish the permanent headquarters for my company. The space was perfect, large enough to accommodate our growing team, located in a thriving business district, and architecturally stunning enough to make a statement about who we were and where we were going. But here's where the story gets interesting. As I was walking through the building with my real estate agent, discussing the possibilities and the logistics of making an offer, she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. "The current owner is actually looking at several potential buyers," she said casually. "There's a management consulting firm that's been very interested, and I think the principal's name is Jake something. Jake Morrison. No, that's not right. Jake Williams? Does that ring a bell?" My heart stopped. Jake Williams? About my age? Works for a Fortune 500 company? Drives a BMW? That sounds right. Do you know him? I couldn't speak for a moment. Jake. My brother Jake, who had laughed at me for borrowing $50, who had told me I'd never amount to anything, who had treated me like a failure my entire life, was trying to buy the same building I wanted for his own business expansion. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted, but this wasn't a movie. This was real life, and I had a decision to make. I could either let this opportunity slip away, or I could do something that would prove once and for all that dreams don't just pay bills. They can buy entire buildings. I asked my real estate agent to give me 24 hours to consider my options. That night, I called my financial advisor and my lawyer. I explained the situation, and together we developed a strategy that would ensure I not only got the building, but did it in a way that would make an unforgettable impression. The next morning, I called the building's owner directly. I introduced myself, explained my interest in the property, and asked if we could meet that afternoon to discuss terms. He agreed, and we scheduled a meeting for 2 o'clock. I arrived at the meeting with my lawyer, my financial advisor, and a briefcase containing something that would change the entire dynamic of the negotiation. After the standard pleasantries and property discussion, I looked the owner in the eye and said, "I understand you're looking for a quick sale. I'm prepared to make you an offer that will close within 48 hours. He leaned forward, clearly interested. "What kind of offer are we talking about?" I opened my briefcase and pulled out a certified check for $11 million. "I'm prepared to offer you $11 million, cash, no financing contingencies, no inspection period, no delays. We can close on Friday if you're willing to accept this offer." The room was silent. The owner stared at the check, then at me, then back at the check. "Are you serious? This is real?" "Completely serious. The check is certified, the funds are available, and my lawyer has already prepared all the necessary paperwork. If you're willing to accept this offer, we can have the building transferred to my name by the end of the week." He didn't hesitate. "Deal." We shook hands, and I owned the building. But the story doesn't end there. It gets better. The next step was the part I'd been looking forward to since the moment I learned Jake was interested in the same property. I asked my real estate agent to contact Jake and let him know that the building had been sold, but not to mention who had purchased it. I wanted to handle that revelation personally. I spent the weekend moving my company into our new headquarters. We hired movers, interior designers, and even a professional photographer to document the transition. By Monday morning, our entire operation was set up in the most beautiful office space I'd ever seen. That's when I called Jake. It was exactly 8 months after he'd lent me $50 and told me I'd never amount to anything. 8 months since he'd laughed at me for being broke and desperate. 8 months since he'd made me feel like the biggest failure in our family. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Marcus, this is unexpected. What's going on?" "Hey, Jake, I hope you're having a good morning. I wanted to call and thank you for something." "Thank me? For what?" "For lending me that $50 8 months ago. I know it might not seem like much to you, but it really helped me out when I needed it most. And I'm calling because I promised I'd pay you back, and I always keep my promises." There was a pause. "Marcus, you don't need to make a big deal about $50. I honestly forgot I even lent it to you." "Well, I didn't forget. In fact, I've been thinking about it a lot lately. See, I've been working on this business venture and things have been going pretty well. Actually, better than well. I was wondering if you'd like to meet me for lunch today. I have something I want to show you." Jake sounded surprised but agreed. We arranged to meet at a restaurant in downtown Detroit, not far from where my new office was located. I arrived early and chose a table by the window with a perfect view of my building. Jake walked in exactly on time, wearing one of his perfectly pressed suits and carrying his leather briefcase. He looked exactly the same as he had 8 months earlier, successful, confident, and completely unaware that the balance of power between us had fundamentally shifted. "So," he said as he sat down, "what's this mysterious thing you want to show me? And please tell me this isn't another one of your get-rich-quick schemes." I smiled and pulled out an envelope. "Actually, it's exactly what you think it is. But first, I want to give you this." I handed him the envelope, which contained a check for $50 and a handwritten note. He opened the envelope and read the note aloud. "Jake, thank you for the loan. As promised, here's your $50 back, plus interest. I hope this teaches you that dreams don't just pay bills. Sometimes they buy entire buildings. Love, your little brother Marcus." Jake looked up at me, confused. "What does this mean? What buildings?" I pointed out the window to the 6-story building across the street. "That building. The one you were trying to buy for your consulting firm expansion. The one that just sold last week." His face went pale. "You're telling me you bought that building? Marcus, that building cost millions of dollars. There's no way you could afford—" $11 million, I interrupted. "I paid $11 million in cash last Friday. Would you like to see the deed?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the digital copy of the building's deed, clearly showing my name as the owner. Jake stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to speak but couldn't form words. "How is this possible?" he finally whispered. "Remember that ridiculous business venture you were so worried about? The one you said would never go anywhere? Well, it turns out there was a pretty significant market for what I was building. We got a venture capital investment, scaled nationally, and just closed our first year with over $8 million in revenue. The building is our new headquarters." Jake was still staring at the deed on my phone. $8 million in revenue? From your little software thing?" "From my little software thing," I confirmed. "We've got over 15,000 clients now, a team of 43 employees, and we're projected to do over $20 million in revenue next year. But you know what the best part is, Jake? The absolute best part?" He looked up at me, and for the first time in our entire relationship, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not just surprise or shock, but genuine respect. "The best part is that none of this would have happened if you hadn't laughed at me that day. If you hadn't made me feel so small, so worthless, so convinced that I needed to prove you wrong, your $50 loan didn't just help me cover my rent. It gave me the motivation to build something incredible. The waiter came to take our order, but Jake waved him away. I need a minute to process this. Marcus, I owe you an apology. A huge apology. I was wrong about you, wrong about your business, wrong about everything. I treated you terribly, and I'm sorry. I appreciate that, Jake, I really do. But I'm not telling you this story to make you feel bad or to get an apology. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something important. We've spent our entire lives with you thinking you were the successful one, and me being the dreamer who couldn't get his act together. But success isn't just about having a steady job and a nice car and a perfect credit score. Sometimes it's about taking risks, believing in something when nobody else does, and being willing to fail spectacularly in pursuit of something extraordinary. Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing everything I'd told him. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, more thoughtful. Can I ask you something? Are you happy? I mean, really happy? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, I've spent my entire career climbing the corporate ladder, following all the rules, doing everything I was supposed to do. I make good money, I have job security, I have a nice house and a nice car. But I can't remember the last time I felt truly excited about anything. I can't remember the last time I felt like I was doing something that mattered, something that made a difference. You've built something from nothing, something that helps people, something that's yours. I think I might be jealous. It was the most honest thing Jake had ever said to me, and suddenly I understood something I'd never realized before. All those years of him putting me down, treating me like a failure, making me feel small. Maybe that wasn't about me at all. Maybe it was about his own fears, his own insecurities, his own regrets about the path he'd chosen. Jake, I said, it's never too late to change direction. It's never too late to take a risk, to try something new, to build something that matters to you. You're smart, you're capable, and you have resources most people don't have. If you're not happy with where you are, you can change it. He smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked genuine. Maybe I will. Maybe it's time I stopped playing it safe and started dreaming a little bigger. Andrei, we finished our lunch, and I gave him a tour of my new building. He was impressed by the office space, fascinated by the software we'd developed, and genuinely interested in the business we'd built. As we walked through the floors of the building, I found myself seeing Jake, not as the critical older brother who had always made me feel inadequate, but as someone who had been trapped in his own version of success, someone who had been just as limited by his choices as I had been by my circumstances. When we reached the top floor, which I'd converted into a combination conference room and lounge area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, Jake stopped and looked out at the Detroit skyline. Marcus, I want to ask you something, and I want you to know I'm asking as your brother, not as someone who's trying to get something from you. What's that? I've been thinking about leaving my job, about starting something on my own. I have some ideas, some connections, and I've saved up a pretty significant amount of money over the years. Would you be willing to give me some advice? Not as an investor or a partner, just as someone who's been through the process of building something from scratch. I looked at my brother, this man who had spent our entire relationship making me feel like I wasn't good enough, and realized that he was asking me for help. Not financial help, not a handout, but genuine guidance from someone he respected. It was a moment I never thought I'd experience, and honestly, it felt better than any amount of money I'd ever made. Of course, I said, I'd be honored to help you however I can. Over the next several months, Jake and I developed a relationship that was completely different from anything we'd had before. He started coming to me for advice about his business ideas, and I found myself genuinely enjoying our conversations. He was smart, thoughtful, and had insights about the corporate world that were invaluable as my own company continued to grow. Eventually, Jake did leave his corporate job and start his own consulting firm. He focused on helping mid-sized companies optimize their operations and improve their efficiency. It was a natural fit for his skills and experience, and he was good at it. Really good. His business grew steadily, and within a year, he was generating more revenue than he'd been making at his corporate job. More importantly, he was happier. He had energy and enthusiasm that I'd never seen from him before. He was finally doing something that felt meaningful to him. But the real transformation in our relationship came about 6 months after he'd started his business. He called me on a Tuesday afternoon, and I could hear excitement in his voice. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. I just closed the biggest deal of my career. A Fortune 500 company hired me to consult on a major operational restructuring. The contract is worth over $2 million. That's incredible, Jake. I'm so proud of you. You've built something amazing." "Thanks, but that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I want to pay you back." "Pay me back for what?" "For everything. For the advice, for the encouragement, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. I know I can't undo the way I treated you for all those years, but I want to do something to show you how much our relationship means to me now." He paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. "I want to make a donation to a charity in your name, not because I think you need the money, but because I want to honor the person you've become and the way you've changed my life." "Jake, you don't need to." "I'm donating $50,000 to a small business development fund in Detroit. $50,000 to help other dreamers get their start, just like you did. It's $1,000 for every dollar you borrowed from me, and it's going to help entrepreneurs who are exactly where you were 8 months ago." I was speechless. The gesture was so thoughtful, so meaningful, that I couldn't find words to respond. Jake had taken the most humiliating moment of our relationship and turned it into something beautiful. "Jake, that's incredible. Thank you. Thank you, Marcus, for showing me that it's never too late to become the person you're meant to be." Today, Jake and I are closer than we've ever been. We meet for lunch regularly, we collaborate on business projects, and we've both become successful in our own ways. My software company continues to grow, and we're now looking at expanding internationally. Jake's consulting firm has become one of the most respected in the region, and he's genuinely happy with the work he's doing. But the most important thing isn't the money or the success or the buildings or the recognition. The most important thing is that we've learned to see each other as we really are. Not as the roles we played in our family, not as the expectations we'd always carried, but as two people who took different paths and found our way to the same destination. The $50 Jake lent me 8 months ago wasn't just money. It was a catalyst for transformation. Not just for me, but for both of us. It taught me that sometimes the people who doubt us the most are actually giving us the greatest gift of all, the motivation to prove them wrong. And sometimes, in the process of proving them wrong, we end up proving something even more important, that we're all capable of changing, growing, and becoming better versions of ourselves. So if you're someone who's been told you'll never amount to anything, if you're someone who's been laughed at for your dreams, if you're someone who's been made to feel small by people who are supposed to support you, I want you to remember this story. Remember that your biggest critics might actually be your biggest motivators. Remember that the moments when you feel smallest are often the moments when you're about to grow the most. And remember that dreams don't just pay bills. Sometimes they buy entire buildings, transform relationships, and change everything you thought you knew about yourself and the people you love. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt underestimated or overlooked, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Share your own story of proving someone wrong, or tell me about a time when someone's doubt motivated you to achieve something incredible. And if you're currently in that place where you're feeling small, where someone has made you feel like your dreams don't matter, hold on to that feeling, use it, let it fuel you. Because sometimes the greatest success stories start with the smallest moments of doubt.